I can't do that. I don't dare take a risk. I'm afraid to try that. I can't imagine what else I would be doing. I don't really want to go to that party, but I feel obligated. Living very small lives and letting their limiting beliefs really control the way that they live and behave.
The first myth that people who have imposter syndrome believe is that it's a personal flaw and it's just them. Nobody else, because nobody else seems to have it, it's just them. And for that reason, they keep it a secret.
The fear of being found out makes us small, makes us invisible, leads us to the wrong decisions, fight or flight. The fear of being found out is caused by voices from the past, by wisdom from the past.
Welcome everybody to the Impostor Syndrome Summit. I'm Coach Mary Medley and I'm very, very excited. Today we have a really special guest who's coming right after Vreneli Stedelmeyer, who was with us yesterday. Today's guest is Lauren Valbert. She is a person who has reinvented herself several times. She has founded her own company twice, been a global marketing communications professional for tech companies for many years, developed innovation programs and corporate clients, and has been working with startups and scale-ups for more than 2 decades. In the newest chapter of her life, she has started her own training company, Training 2.0, to help people raise their game in professional settings, whether that be as a trainer, a facilitator, or at an event. She is also a seasoned podcast and event host, panel moderator, webinar facilitator, and workshop leader. Her personal passion is to increase the representation of marginalized people on stage and in media, as presentation is representation. She has recently published a book called Impostor: Dismantle the Stories You Tell Yourself and Overcome Imposter Syndrome, which helps readers identify and overcome imposter syndrome and to identify their own particular imposter persona. Well, Lauren, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if there is anything I have left out of the introduction.
That was a great introduction, and what a wonderful video to start. Thank you for having me on this exciting summit. I love the topic, obviously. Yeah, as you mentioned in my bio, I have had a whole career in the corporate world, and I really switched my focus to training and coaching people. And what I observed is really what you're talking about, which is the number of leaders, the number of people you think, oh, that they're great, they know what they're doing, they all suffer from imposter syndrome. And it really shocked me when I started to talk to people who were, C-level or senior managers. And that's why I wrote the book. My book that I wrote was because I was so frustrated, but to see this over and over again, the same things that were being said. So I'm really excited to be here. I think this is a topic that we need to be talking about more. Thank you.
I agree. And actually, that's my purpose for putting together this summit, is
Right.
to get as many points of view on the topic from experts and people who have been dealing with imposter syndrome, so that we have like a one-stop information place where people can know more, learn more with this series of interviews. So I'm going to go straight to the first question. Tell us your story on your experience on imposter syndrome and if you beat it.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, it's interesting because I was raised by intellectuals, people who really told me, in terms of my work, in terms of my career, there was nothing stopping me. I shouldn't let anything stop me. So in my work, I actually really subscribe to the Richard Branson quote, which he said, when somebody asks you to do something you don't know how to do, say yes and then figure it out. And so I was able to really jump into my career, which is also why I keep remaking myself, because sometimes I jumped into the wrong career just because I thought I would try it. But that was not the area that I had imposter syndrome. Where I had imposter syndrome was in my personal life, in my social life. I am neurodiverse. I have ADD, and I never seemed to understand what social rules were. I never understood how people communicated, how people kind of made their identity in social situations. I didn't know how to be as a person. So it was very strange. Most people have, or some people have the opposite. And so for me, I had to really learn how to be myself in social situations and not worry so much about people are going to see me figure out that I'm weird or different or I don't know what I'm doing or and so I beat it. I was able to really figure out how to be me. And but it took a long time. I mean a long time. I was in my late 30s by the time I kind of figured out. So I think that part of the reason why I really was passionate about this subject is because neurodiverse people really struggle with this in particular. And so I really believe that neurodivergence can be a hidden challenge that we don't really address enough. And so this is something that I really want to get across to particularly people with neurodivergence, that imposter syndrome keeps you from thinking that you're normal and keeps you from being social, and it doesn't have to. The other, I should say, the only real thing that I felt imposter syndrome about in my career, my work, was when I wrote the book, because I really said to myself, I don't have a psychology degree. Do I know enough to write this book? Should I be writing this book? I felt that the whole time. So it can also be new challenges that can make you feel imposter syndrome. But I wrote it. I wrote the book and I published it. So you can overcome that as well.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is also a dream of mine to one day write a book, one day very soon. So,
Excellent.
in your book, actually, you talk about short term imposter syndrome. So, could you please explain why this is short term and how long it lasts?
Well, it really depends on the situation. What I mean by short-term imposter syndrome is when you are kind of dumped into a new situation very abruptly or without a lot of support. Frequently, when we start a new job, or start a new, or I moved countries. I moved from the US to the Netherlands, and I definitely had imposter syndrome because I really didn't speak Dutch very well when I moved here. And so I think it's being put into a new situation, and it lasts as long as you don't ask for support. How about that? How about that as a trick answer? If you don't ask for support, it can last a long, long time. If you do ask for support, sometimes you might not get it, but if you don't ask, you definitely won't get it. So if you're feeling temporary or short-term imposter syndrome, if you're in a new situation and you are feeling like, I don't know how to do this, I feel like somebody's going to figure me out, find somebody you can trust and talk to them about it. Somebody at your work, somebody who's a friend, somebody who can help you and be like, hey, remember these great skills you have, or remember these great, life experience things that you have, you'll get through it. So asking for support is the fastest way to get out of it.
How does social media increase imposter syndrome?
I write a lot about this in my book because I think that it has fanned the flames of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome has been around since before social media, but social media has definitely increased the amount of imposter syndrome we have, because social media is basically a curated look at someone's life. So someone who is good at social media presents a curated version of their life that obviously looks the best. Obviously, it's all the wins, it's all the greatest moments of their life, it's all the happy moments in, on in their life, the weddings, the anniversaries, the birthdays, all of the wonderful, happy moments. And what people do is they look at that and they compare that person's curated outside to their inside, to their everyday, to their sad moments, to their normal moments, their non-happy moments, and think, I suck. I'm not good enough. I don't have those great shiny moments in my life as often as this person seems to. But in the best case scenario, we curate our lives on social media, obviously. In the worst case scenario, those people are manufacturing this. Like you've seen things about influencers and how they manufacture things. So it is a really good thing to become aware of the fact that doom scrolling is a thing, and then when we look at the curated outside views of other people's lives, we get a very distorted perspective of how those people are actually living. And it is a really good thing to remember that that is like TV, like any other entertainment product, that is a manufactured thing.
In your book, you also talk about the languages in the persona. So there's the introvert, the eraser, the survivor, and the different. Could you explain these languages to the layman's and how it applies to imposter syndrome?
Right. So when I looked at people who were suffering imposter syndrome, not everybody was the same. A lot of people expressed the same thing, but had a different attitude about how they felt about it or how they got there. And I identified 4 personas. And this is not to say that one can't have more than one persona, but identified 4 persona, which is the introvert, the eraser, the different, and the survivor. The introvert is a lot of people know about the introvert. The introvert is a thing where you give energy away as you deal with people, and so you become very exhausted. And part of the signs of introversion is you're better in writing than in person, and so you feel an imposter syndrome around communication or sharing yourself at work or sharing yourself in a social group. You often don't want to go out to parties. You don't want to have like late nights, as opposed to extroverts who love that, feed off of other people's energies, want more, 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 more. And so frequently it can give you an imposter syndrome about communication or the amount of the how much you can show yourself, because you may not feel like you can show yourself very much in public. That's totally normal. I mean, but it is something that is judged by society. The eraser is somebody who has been taught or shown by their parents, by their environment, by however they grew up, that they should erase themselves. So this is a person who is afraid to speak up in group situations, who is frequently apologizing, over apologizing. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, when you don't need to, those kinds of things. These are people who kind of count themselves out. I don't dare take a risk. I don't dare try that new thing. And so this is a thing that it's probably the most common understanding of imposter syndrome. Um, the different is somebody like a neurodivergent person, somebody who has always felt different, felt strange, and felt imposter syndrome around that. I obviously identify with that as well. This can also be somebody who just felt different growing up. So if you, for example, grew up in a religious household and you are not religious, that can make you feel very different. They can just feel not normal, and that gives you imposter syndrome for sure. And the last one is the survivor. And the survivor is somebody who has had childhood abuse or childhood neglect, or it may not even been in childhood. It could have been later in life, abuse or neglect. It is somebody who probably has a lot of anger and displaced frustration and does not know how to express that. And so may go from being okay to being really angry very, very fast. And that can really affect your performance at work. It can really affect your social environment, your relationship with your friends. And that is something that can really cause imposter syndrome, because again, like the different, you don't feel normal. You don't feel like you can be social or be normal at work, because you get these rage moments where you're really, really angry because you've been triggered from your trauma, either in childhood or in the past. So those are kind of the four rough personas that I have seen that have kind of cover the different types of imposter syndrome I have seen.
Okay. So, I guess if somebody identifies themselves in any one of this, then the imposter syndrome is attached to that personality. What are some of the things that you hear, for example, an introvert saying uh, when it comes to their chance to be challenged, to try something new? Um, would you
Right.
give us an example?
Yeah. So an introvert is somebody who probably talks to me mostly about how can I present myself better? How can I be more assertive at work? How can, when I'm in team meetings, we go around the room and everybody's supposed to give a presentation, and I'm sweating and I'm scared because I know what I'm an expert. I'm an expert in this. I'm an expert in this. Why can't I get up and communicate about this? And that's very, very common, is that they have the knowledge, but they get flustered. They don't find the words. They can't communicate. And so that makes them feel dumb. That makes them feel not as good as, and that's definitively not true.
Would you call that situational anxiety? That they don't have anxiety all the time. It's just that moment when they have to present something or put themselves forward.
Yeah, I would say introverts have a lot of situational anxiety. However, introverts can also have generalized anxiety, so it depends on what they're going through. But in a lot of cases, anytime that they have to deal in groups, they feel anxious. So I would say yes, it's a situation where they're in groups is mostly when they feel anxious.
Okay. What is your advice on finding your own voice as a way to fight imposter syndrome?
Whew, that's a great question. It's a very broad question, obviously. So I think that the most important thing is, first of all, to understand how does your imposter syndrome show itself. Talk about the symptoms first. Write down the symptoms. If you have a journal, I carry a journal all the time, and I would jot down things that I observed about myself, that where I felt stressed in situations, like you were saying, situational anxiety. What's making me stressed? What is keeping me from being my best in this situation? Why do I feel like this with this person and not with other people? And so becoming aware is really, really key. The very first step is becoming aware of the situations, the people, the environments that create this kind of imposter syndrome in you. You might be feeling more imposter syndrome with certain people at work because they criticize you really meanly, or that you might feel more imposter syndrome with your family because you sisters or brothers are higher achievers or whatever. Figure it out, and then that is the area where you want to pay attention. Where the areas where you feel the most stress is the diagnosis for what you can work on in terms of finding your own voice. The most important thing is to understand that you have unique value. And I know that a lot of people with imposter syndrome are going to go, no, I don't. Immediate deflection. No, I don't. What are you talking about? I don't have anything. You do. You were hired for a job at some point, I assume, or you got into a school, or you have received compliments about the fact that you have value. I believe that. So take that and understand what your value is to your work, to your school, to your friends, to your family, to whomever has given you that feedback that you are worth something, that you have value. And then look at that and say, how do I have value? What value am I bringing? So what you can actually do is, when you have a list of your value. So, if you say, I'm really smart. I know my stuff. I know I'm great at this topic. I know my stuff in this area. I can write really well. I'm a really good writer. All of those things. Then what you can do is use those things as an affirmation to yourself. Anytime you're going to go into those challenging situations, anytime that you're going to face those challenging people, just literally look at your notebook and read your list. Read your list and say to myself, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. Because you need to act as your own support and in that moment to give yourself a voice, to let yourself be heard. It is the most important thing to be able to believe in your own value. Maybe not total. Maybe you don't have to believe that you're the greatest person. That's okay. But you do have value. Every single person does. And so it's really good to kind of have the sense in that moment when you feel challenged of what your unique value is, what you're bringing into that room when you go into that room. So that's my suggestion for, yeah, starting to kind of be able to get over this fear of challenging situations in the moment.
I think that advice is great. In one of your videos, you say that imposter syndrome is not just with women, anyone can have it. And I have spoken to other experts who view imposter syndrome as being caused by cultural controls on women. So mostly women are expected to have it, because of the controls of expected to be, of service, to be mothers or to be mothering, not go getters. It makes you look like you're not really playing your role as a
Right.
woman. So, what is your view on this?
Right. I think it's reductionist and sexist to say it's a women's problem. It isn't everyone's problem. I generally think that the people who suffer more from it are people who are marginalized by society. And the people that are marginalized by society are people who the society was not built for. So in Europe and in the US, this society is generally built for white people and society is generally built for men. And, you can argue with me, I don't care. The patriarchy exists and it's real. And so anybody who does not fit into the category of white man generally has it more challenging because the society is automatically telling them you won't be able to get above a certain level in a company because you're not a white man. It doesn't, they don't have to, the society literally doesn't have to say that to them. All you have to do is open a newspaper or look at LinkedIn or something. And what you see is CEO is a white man. And that is still true, even though it is changing. It's getting better somewhat, but not very slowly. And it's still, still being confronted. So you would say that non-white, non-men tend to have imposter syndrome because the society is showing them you're not the people that are in power here. You're not the people who benefit. However, it is true that literally anybody can feel imposter syndrome. I read an article in which Russell Crowe, the actor, said that he himself, during the filming of Gladiator, the movie, it was like 20 years ago, he and Joaquin Phoenix, his co-star, felt such imposter syndrome during the filming of Gladiator that Ridley Scott, who was the director, had to like coach them through it because they were just really feeling like I can't do this. This is too, I'm not good enough to do this. So I mean, that's one example, but there are examples of white men too who have felt imposter syndrome. So I think it is untrue to say it's a women's issue. I think it's untrue to say it's only an issue for non-white men. I think it is a thing that every single person has felt. Now, it may be, as I said before, it may be short term. I don't think that Russell Crowe feels imposter syndrome all day, every day, in every role that he plays. Maybe
Yeah.
it was just a particularly challenging role for him. But to say it is a women's issue or to say it is only an issue for people who are not white men is reductionist. I think we need to look beyond that. I think we need to assume that everybody has it, talk about it like everybody has it, like it's not a woman's problem. Because if we accept the thesis that it's only a woman's problem, then everything that is only a woman's problem gets dismissed. So it'll just get dismissed. So let's make it an everybody problem so we can solve it, right?
Yes, I agree with you. And on that, speaking on that topic of, the patriarchy and the cultural working systems, yesterday's speaker was Vernelli Stedelmeyer, and she's a coach on imposter syndrome, among other issues, in the Netherlands. So she's in Europe. And her question was, the system or cultural working systems make people vulnerable to imposter syndrome. So I guess this is whether you're, like you said, you'll find, for example, in the US, heading companies, the CEOs, the chairmen of boards, they are white people, which means so many people are left out. So her question is, if such a system makes people vulnerable to imposter syndrome, how can we help people who feel like they don't fit in?
Nice. It's a great question. I think that what we have seen, so I'm gonna address it on a macro level and on a micro level. So on a macro level, what we have seen over the past kind of 2 generations is more and more people who are not fitting the mold of the norm. So again, in Europe, I'm just going to speak about Europe. It's typically, CEO is a white man. There is kind of 2 approaches to that. There is either I am going to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard, 10 times as hard, and climb that ladder and overcome this. And you have seen people, I'm going to talk about women in this case, but there's plenty of other people who have done this, who have climbed the ladder as a result of working 10 times as hard as a man. um, I'm not saying that men don't work hard, PS. I'm just saying that in order to get to that C level, women have to work harder in general. The other route that we're seeing is a lot of women saying, I'm not going to compete on that. I'm not going to try to compete on that. I'm going to go the other way, which is to start my own company or to do my own thing. And I think that the creation of the internet has made that actually easier and easier. There are very few barriers now, technology barriers, to creating your own business and becoming very successful at it. So I think you're seeing a lot more women who are going around the corporate ladder, not even trying to mess, not saying I'm gonna try to make it to a CEO of a big company. It's really to go around that. So I think that what is going to happen is more and more of those women owned, women started businesses are going to become more and more successful. So you're going to have more and more big companies with women at the top built in. So that is going to help the situation. Um, what we can do is we as women, and again, I'm going to lean on the women thing right now, but the same can be applied to all of the things. So I I regard my role as being both a woman and somebody who is neurodivergent. And so what I am going to do is I'm going to reach my hand down to those women and those people with neurodivergence who are struggling, who are trying to start out, who are trying to begin their journey, and give them the learnings, be a mentor, provide that feedback, let them ask questions, be accessible to them. That is what I would challenge. I'm 53, and I think that, I have had 30 years of working experience, and I can help a lot of people with my experience. And I think that's what every single one of us can do um, on an individual level. I think every one of us should regard it as part of our personal, our human responsibility to reach a hand down to a person below us. And I would say that's also the responsibility of the white men as well, to reach the hand down to somebody who is not like them. And what tends to happen is it tends to be we focus on people who are like ourselves, which is why we continue to be in the same situation. So try reaching out to somebody who isn't like you. Try reaching out to somebody who may have a different perspective. I coach lots of different types of people from all different kinds of backgrounds, and so I really think that it is a tremendous learning, both for them, but also for me, to learn about people's different perspectives. And I would really challenge everybody to do that.
Okay. Um, you had touched on it a little bit, but what motivated you to write your book? What was your first thought when you said, you know what, I'm going to sit and write this book? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so to be honest, a lot of the reason was because of the pandemic. Because I, like everybody else, was stuck inside, not being able to help people in the way that I wanted to help people, not being able to reach as many people. Events weren't happening, so I couldn't do speaking opportunities about that. It was really, I just felt very limited in my ability to help people. And I'm driven. I literally get energy from helping people. So I was like, ah, and I thought, you know, I think maybe I have enough to write a book about this. Maybe if I sit down and start thinking about an outline, could I actually have enough here to write a book about? Because I have to help people, because I really want to address this in a bigger scale. And so it really did start because I was frustrated in my inability to help people, as many people as I wanted to help during the pandemic. I think a lot of people wrote a book during the pandemic for the same reason. There was a lot of us sitting inside, like, I need to do things. I need to do something.
Yeah.
So that was really the motivator. But I wrote it in 5 weeks. It came flooding out of me once I had the outline. It really came flooding out of me because I realized I was really passionate about this subject, and I was really motivated to help people in this subject, because it frustrates me still to see super high achieving people, especially women, who are still like, oh well, who I say, tell me. I literally start in a lot of cases when I coach people, tell me about what you've achieved or what you've accomplished, and they can't do it. These are women who have put together their CV, but they cannot say, I achieved this, I did this. They deflect. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't know. And I'm ah! It should be, you should know. You should have this list, as I talked about before. And when I said have a list of what you are good at, and what you have achieved. You should always have that list. That list should be at the top of your tongue to say when somebody says, tell me about yourself, your achievements. You should be able to be like, I did this, I did this, I did this. And it's not,
And
and we need to get away from the belief that that's bragging. It is not bragging. It is just being aware of your own value. Because that's the first thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to brag. Ah! Ah! Yeah.
I understand you completely, because even when people are job hunting, um, you always have that wonder whether in your resume or in your CV you should indicate your achievements and up to what level. For
Right.
example, if you say, I ran a department in procurement and logistics for 4 years, um, and so what? What did you achieve? I
Right.
implemented something, and then what did you achieve? And that was something that I also learned when I had a career coach, and it was so hard for me to own my achievements, and I didn't realize it, but I kept being pushed to say what I achieved. I knew it, but I thought, why does that have to go on there?
Yeah.
And I realize now that it is definitely imposter syndrome. You feel like, yeah, it's a bit braggadocious. Why are we doing that? But it is actually very important to know your value and what you have done, what has been the immediate consequence of it, in terms of success. And that's completely
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say the ebook that I've shared with you, that you're going to share with participants, on negotiation, really goes very deeply into this, because what you have to look at it like, it is the way that companies look at themselves. What value is a company generating? Great. I'm an individual working for a company. And so even if you think about it on the most transactional level, you've got to think about what value am I bringing to this company? That's how you believe in yourself enough to negotiate. If you just walk in and go, I've been nice, people like me. Like there's no value, there's no company approved value there. You have to be able to say, these are the results I've achieved. These are the benefits I give, that's how you negotiate with strength and power.
That is true. So tell us about your company, Training 2.0, and how people can get to work with you.
Yeah, Training 2.0 is a training company and a coaching company. I do both training and coaching. And basically, my focus is on kind of three areas. It is creating leadership in individuals. So, how do you act as an advocate for yourself, even when you don't have a C on your title? So, how do you speak and act with leadership and authority? And if you start doing this when you are a junior, this will make you progress and be more successful in your career if you know how to speak and act like a leader from the beginning. And then I also talk about team communications. So, how do I communicate with other people who may not even speak my language quite literally? This is quite an issue in Europe and between Europe and the US. When I moved here to the Netherlands, I was dealing a lot with US teams who were like, but everybody speaks a different language. Literally, we don't know how to communicate. And so, how do you actually create a team, especially virtually? Nowadays, post pandemic, we're all working virtually, even if we're in the same country. So, how do you build successful teams and how do you communicate? And that is an individual task as well as a team task. You need to know what you're bringing and what you need from other people. And finally, then of course, it is really coaching and training on imposter syndrome specifically and how to address your own imposter syndrome, identify it, diagnose it, understand how you are limiting yourself so that you can start to get over it. So those are kind of the areas that I work, and I work in person as well as online, as we all do nowadays. So I would love to work with people on that.
Okay, so to everybody watching, you can check the description for the link for Training 2.0 and how to get in touch with Lauren, and also for the free giveaway that she's going to be giving all our listeners. And please feel free to comment if you have gotten anything of value or you have a question that you would like to ask on imposter syndrome. And Lauren, we have our final question for the day. This one is coming from a participant by the name of Brenda Griffey. And she's asking, is imposter syndrome the same as what we older people have always referred to as insecurity? It makes me think of the Peter principle, where people rise in a career to a position where they no longer feel comfortable and perhaps lacking in skills. Please help us old folks understand the new terminology.
Right. Thank you, Brenda, for that question. I think that, there is an aspect of imposter syndrome in the Peter Principle, but I'll kind of set that aside for a second. Imposter syndrome is something that is, I would say, insecurity is part of it. Insecurity is definitely part of it, but I think to just call it insecurity is to underplay how damaging it can be to yourself and also to people around you, the society around you. And so I would like to say it's a superset. It's bigger than insecurity. It is really not believing that you're not capable, believing that you are not able to, believing that you can't take risks, believing that you are going to just put your head down and do the thing that is comfortable to you until you die because you are too scared to reach out of that box. And that means that there are a lot of really talented and smart individuals who are sitting in a box. And so I would say it's beyond insecurity. And the reason why I approve of it being called a syndrome is because it is something that is quite debilitating. It is quite hard to live your life when you are like this. And I get really frustrated when I see people living like this, because you can tell that they're keeping themselves small. So, as I said, insecurity is really part of it. The thing about imposter syndrome frequently is it starts when you're very young. It can start when you are, a child, because of comparison, because of the disease of comparison, because either your parents are saying you're not as good as, or your teachers are saying you're not as good as, or you're being bullied. And there's this sense of looking around you. There's a certain point in childhood when we start to go to school, or even before, where we start to look around and go, other people are better at that than me. And either that's something that you see, or that's something that's told to you, or whatever. And then you start to feel small. And if you do not have people around you who are developing that in you, you can stay small. You can stay small for life. So the Peter Principle is something that kind of plays into that, because if you get to the point in your career, I think this is happening particularly to a lot of older people, myself included, when the technology, the rate of technology is changing so fast that we're getting to a point in our age where we think, oh God, am I going to even know how to, use the laptop that I am given by work in the way that I need to use it? This new technology is being asked of me. Oh, that new thing, chat GPT now, everything is new. And so there is this constant sort of fear of becoming supernumerary, becoming unnecessary. And that is, it's a completely understandable fear. um, I could say that that's an imposter syndrome, because I think you're probably more capable than you give yourself credit, but it's scary. But I think that it is different, in the fact that it comes later in life. So I think imposter syndrome in its truest form is probably with you for life. It's probably started to show up at least when you go to school. I think that's my best guess on that.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I don't know if you have any other comments you'd like to add. We've come to the end of our interview, and I'm so thankful that you came and that you're able to provide your expertise. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just really thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sending this out into the world. I think having these experts together to talk about this issue, promoting it and getting the message out is so important, because as I said, I really believe we all feel this, and the majority of us are too scared to talk about it. So when sunlight kills the germs, so let's kill this, let's get over it, and let's get beyond it as a society. I think that's how we do it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for coming once again. And thank you to everyone who is watching. Make sure you read the links in the description for this live video, and you can be able to get the freebie that Lauren was giving to everyone who is going to be watching and following. If you want to work with her, her links are also going to be there. I also want to remind everybody that we are doing this from the 6th to the 18th of June. So make sure that you send in your questions so that we can be able to participate and get an answer directly from the experts, as we got an answer today for Brenda. So make sure you follow our pages on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm sorry you can hear my voice is breaking up. I have a really bad flu. But make sure you check out my website, mindsetwithmary.com, for more information on this and other programs all about imposter syndrome. Thank you and have a good day or night.